We are pleased to be joined by Augustana football legend Ken Anderson, the NFL MVP in 1981. Ken, you're a finalist for the Pro Football Hall of Fame for the third time and the first time since 1998. Have you thought a lot about the Hall of Fame? Is it something that means a great deal to you, Ken?
Well, I haven't thought a lot about it. I know the first time that it happened where I was a finalist, after I'd been out for 5 years and didn't make it that year, I was disappointed. But, from then on, I don't really think about it much until it gets to be this time of year when people bring it up. And, of course, I think I've been a semifinalist the 3 years before this and finally a finalist this year. So who knows? But, it doesn't take away from the career I had. And I think I did a lot of good things.
No doubt. Ken, if and when you are inducted into the Hall of Fame, what do you think that moment would be like, and what would that honor mean to you?
Well, I think, kind of the culmination of a career. When you grow up in Batavia, go to Batavia High School, or a real small school, and then you go to Augustana, playing in the NFL, let alone getting in the Hall of Fame, is not something that you think about or dream about, very often. And it would be, fun if it happened, but, kind of the way that I look at it is, I don't know if it could top, when I was back in 1981 standing in Riverfront Stadium as the clock ticked down, and in the Freezer Bowl, we beat San Diego to go to the Bengals' first Super Bowl. Or, being out on the field at halftime in 2021 when I was inducted into the Bengals' first Ring of Honor classes. So those, that was those two events. It's going to be hard to top.
You are widely regarded as one of the greatest players yet to be enshrined into the Hall of Fame. Why do you think so much time has passed without the voters getting you into the Hall? It just got even harder to get in just as of last year.
Well, and I think, as of last year, they combined the three seniors with a coach and a contributor. And if you recall, last year, only one of the seniors went through. So I think the way that they changed it, to include those two in it, is kind of, hurt the seniors' chances a little bit. But I think, as far as I'm concerned, I think, I don't know this, but I think, probably not winning that Super Bowl in Pontiac, I think the voters look, when they look at quarterbacks, it's, the one statistic they look at, did you win a World Championship? And, of course, we did not.
You've accomplished so much, Ken. To this day, you remain the Bengals' all-time passing leader. When you reflect on your career, what are the things that you're most proud of?
Well, I think, starting off, when the Bengals were just, as I say, the fourth year in the history of the franchise, and to be able to go and have success there and make them relevant. I think, we were hurt a little bit back in the 70s and early 80s that, I thought we were just as good as any team in the National Football League, but unfortunately the dynasty called the Pittsburgh Steelers was also in our division. I remember one year, I think we were 11-3, and we didn't win the division because Pittsburgh was 12-2. We won as a wild card that year. But, and like I said, earlier, to be able to take the franchise to their first Super Bowl will always be a special memory.
Your name is all over the Augustana record book for just about every passing record. What were the biggest keys that led to all of your remarkable success with the Vikings in Rock Island?
Well, I just think, we had good coaches. You started off, Ralph Steranko was there my first 2 years, and then Ben Newcomb, my last 2 years. And, we just had a bunch of good guys and a bunch of good players that had a good time playing football together. And, those guys, Paul Ander was there my first 2 years, and he's in the Tribe of Vikings Hall of Fame. And, still my best friend to this day is Dave Markward, who was my receiver the last couple of years. And, we had, Gary Fairchild, who we still stay in touch with. And, I still try to get out there every fall to our Tribe of Vikings golf outing and play in that and get to the game that night to kind of renew acquaintances.
Take us back to before Augustana. You, of course, went to Batavia High School in suburban Chicago. How did that opportunity at Augustana come to be? Because for those who haven't heard this story, it's a really neat one. You wrote a letter to Augustana's coach.
Well, I was already going to go to Augustana to play basketball and baseball. And, I always said, geez, I wouldn't be in this position today if it weren't for my high school football coach, Bill Day, who, kind of got a hold of me. But, when you grow up in a small town, you play every sport because most of the coaches coach more than one sport, and you had to fill out numbers. And, I always thought that baseball was my best sport. I always thought that basketball was my favorite sport, and that's why I was going to Augustana to play them. And then, football is something that you played to get ready for the basketball season. And then, when Coach Day got a hold of me and said, Kenny, you really ought to try out for the football team. And so I think I've got the copy of the letter around here somewhere on the wall. I think it's downstairs. But it's dated, I think, June 28th, asking Coach Tirico if I could try out for the football team. And, he said yes. I was never even an all-conference quarterback in high school, but I was an all-conference safety. And he said, yeah, we're always looking for good defensive backs. And they put me at quarterback, and I remember, Tom O'Rourke was going into his junior year. They'd won the conference the year before. And Doug Morton was the backup. He was also going to be a junior. And they recruited like 5 freshmen. And I said, what chance do I have as a quarterback? Can I go over to defense? And they said, no, we're going to keep you a quarterback for a while. And I got in the second game of the year. From then on, I was the starter. And then went to play basketball, and I was a little late. I get into the start of the basketball practices, and so I was playing on the freshman team, and then one game right around Christmas, we were playing in the Chicago area, and one of the starting guards had 20 points in the first half, but did something to upset the coach and benched him the second half. I went in the second half and had 20 points, and from then on, he and I were the starting guards, and so by the time the spring came around and the baseball coach called and said, we're hitting down the bus bar, and I was a little worn out, so I never did play baseball.
That's an incredible story, Ken. Thank you so much for the time. We're wishing you all the best, and we hope to see you forever enshrined in Canton.
Well, say hi to everybody back at Augustana for me, and I will be out there, in September again next year for sure. So hopefully we'll get out before then, but Augustana is, when I go out there and I kind of talk to the team, you may leave Augustana, but Augustana never leaves you. And it's always nice to be able to talk to the people back in the Quad Cities, and a lot of good, I always say I would not change the 4 years I had at Augustana for anything. Although if we had NIL, I'd probably get all the Hungry Hobo sandwiches I wanted nowadays. I don't know.
I think you still could get all the Hungry Hobo sandwiches you wanted, Ken. I think those are always on the house anytime you're back here in the Quad Cities.
Thank you.